Coming up on this week's episode of Check Your Balances, we talk about the only venture capital room that you get to look at every week. This week, we're talking about Shark Tank. Stick around. It's coming up next.
Check Your Balances is a show produced and owned by Craftwork Capital. The views expressed by the hosts and their guests are personal opinions and should not be considered personal financial advice or the opinion of Craftwork Capital. All investments have risk and may lose money. Consult with your financial advisor, tax preparer, or attorney prior to implementing anything discussed, and please do not use this show as the sole basis for financial decisions.
Welcome back to another week of Check Your Balances. I am Ross Anderson, joined as always by my friend and co-host, Dan Maseka. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you. What's going on?
You're proving this week that you've got shirts that don't say Crooked Crab on them. I like it.
True.
This is a new look for you.
I was very cognizant of what shirt I was wearing. This is the Mammoth WVH shirt from the tour show I was at the other week. Eddie Van Halen's son has a great band, Mammoth WVH, worth checking out. I picked this up a few weeks ago when I saw him in Baltimore.
That is awesome. Well, we appreciate it. The fashion stylings of Dan is always one of my favorite topics of our show every time we set up to record. So maybe we'll be back to some Crooked Crab merch next week.
Everything about the visualization on my side of the camera is opposite of what you've got going on. You're always in some sort of polished look with a collar. We've been over the background situation many times. And I feel like now I'm just stuck in my ways. I'm just going to keep it this way.
If you're in your car going, what are these guys talking about? You can check the show out on YouTube. Our YouTube's picking up a little traction. So I like seeing that we're getting some viewers there. I can't tell if we're just cannibalizing our existing listeners, if people are just switching to consuming our show on YouTube, or if it's actually growing the audience, which is certainly what we hope. But who knows? We appreciate you wherever you are consuming our show, and we hope you're getting something out of it.
I was surprised to learn that YouTube is the #1 spot for consumption of podcasts.
Well, yeah, I think that's why people kept telling us that we were completely missing it by not doing it. And so it was like, yeah, I get it. And then we just had to finally commit to doing it there. So here we are.
Here we are with the minimum effort required to put a podcast on YouTube. We have met that threshold.
That's what we've done. Okay, so we had an idea a few weeks ago to do this show, and it's gotten more interesting since then because there's been news about it. We wanted to talk about Shark Tank. And I have been a consumer of the Shark Tank show for many years. I've always enjoyed it. I love hearing people come on that have found a way into a business, whether that's a good business, whether that's a bad business. I like hearing their story. Where did you come up with the idea? How did you end up doing this nonsense? What are you making? Who do you sell it to? Are you selling any of them? I love it. I love all of it because it's how I think, right? As small business people, it just speaks to my heart. Now, there are some things about Shark Tank that I find silly and over dramatized, and all of the other criticism that you could have about any reality TV show. But I think for people that are into business, I think it's entertaining, and I also think that it's a window into that world for people that maybe aren't into it. And so for that reason, I think it's a good thing. So we were going to talk about that in general. Since we had that idea, the big dog in the tank, Mr. Mark Cuban, the biggest shark around, has announced that he's exiting the show after, I think, this next season. And I believe he's been the only shark that I'm aware of that's basically been on every episode. Because I think they rotate out the other seats. So like Barbara Corcoran, Lori Grenier, Damon John, Robert Herjavec, and then they bring in guest sharks that come in and kind of make a one-off deal. I'm curious how they do that as well. But Mark's leaving. I feel like that's a big blow to the show because he's kind of the name. He's also selling 75% of his ownership reportedly in the Dallas Mavericks. And so I think our show has gone from like something I just wanted to talk about to being a little bit more topical. But Dan, are you a viewer of Shark Tank? And I guess what's your experience been with it?
Yeah, I used to watch Shark Tank every week. It was family TV for us. It was something we could all enjoy, like you said, because there's the business element where you're seeing different businesses people are putting together and how they got there. There's the personal interest side of things where you get the story behind the business, and then just the entertainment of what transpires when you put those two together. I haven't watched as much lately, but I've been a lifelong fan since it started airing.
I think my favorite episodes have to be when it's kids. That's the coolest thing to me when somebody's got like a 10, 11, 12-year-old that comes in and just throws it down on the Shark Tank floor and they're like, "This is my business. I'm the CEO. My dad or my mom is helping, but this is my thing." Those are like the most heartwarming pieces for me, but I find all of it good.
I love those because it goes one of two ways, right? They go through that whole cute spiel and then they start asking, and then either there's like a real business behind that and people are shocked with the numbers. It's like, oh my gosh, this kid actually has something viable going on. Or it's the exact opposite and it's absolutely nothing. And it's some kid asking for $500,000 for a wish and a dream he has. And they're like, you must be kidding me. Like, what are your parents doing letting you come here and talk to us about this thing you have?
So, I find it really interesting that Kevin O'Leary comes from the finance world. So Kevin O'Leary has the O'Leary funds. I believe they run ETFs. This is not a plug for any of their product. I have not used any of their product ever in a client portfolio, and that's not a slight against him either. I haven't really reviewed it because that's not normally in our kind of direct style of what we're using. I find his deal making to be just fascinating, right? And it's very predictable. He is always focused on how do I get my money back. And I think that is specifically his brand, right? I think he's trying to do that to demonstrate what a disciplined investor he is, to build his brand for his investing legacy, right? Like, I think he's kind of almost using it as a market opportunity of like, hey, everybody, look, I'm going to make sure you get your money back. That's kind of how I view him. But he seems to make tons of offers. And at the same time, it feels like he's always the shark people are kind of like not wanting to work with. Is that your takeaway from watching him invest as well?
Yeah. And I like watching him negotiate because he is so disciplined and has a real hard line. He's like, listen, my money is a tool. If you want to use it, I have it for you. But here's how I'm going to get paid back because you're going to go do your thing. And I just want to make sure that my returns are going to be quick and safe to whatever extent that's possible. Whereas he gives none of the warm and fuzzies. So to whatever extent you're investing in people, and you're trying to find a partner for your business, I don't know that he's the one on the other side that you feel like is going to nourish you and help your company grow. He is access to capital, and he does a good job of that, but it comes at a price.
Correct. And now he's promotion. So it seems like what he's done, and I don't know if he had done this before or if they developed this as part of kind of his brand for the show. It seems more like it developed along the way, because early on, it just seemed like he was kind of going into it from I want to make sure I get my money back. He was the royalty guy. He was the, hey, your valuation is nuts, so I'm gonna tell you what the thing is worth, and generally had pretty good multiples that he was working from. And now it seems like, he talks about his like Chef Wonderful stuff, and he's got kind of a few different verticals that I think he's actually gone deep into. He's kind of known as the wine snob on the show as well, and so like anything that ends up in his like one of his verticals, I think he does a pretty good job of actually promoting it. So I think he's become a better marketer as part of doing the show.
That's true. He talks about his, I forget what he calls it, but it's like a platform where he can pair these businesses together that would help each other lift. Honestly, as much as I like the Sharks, it kind of is off-putting when I see them doing their promotion because these are very like powerful people. And then when you see them marketing their things, it's, I don't know. For some reason, when I see the products that they're marketing, I automatically write them off as like either now I feel less good about the person making the deal. Like Kevin O'Leary does a lot of marketing and paid marketing stuff. And it makes
like FTX, for example.
Right. Exactly. To name one.
Just to pull a name out of thin air.
Yeah. So then I'm like, how much do I really respect the man behind the brand if he's going to go out and do that stuff? Because he has plenty of money. Like, I don't think he's hurting for it. I could be wrong. So do you really need to put yourself out there for all these crazy things?
I'm embarrassed to admit how many Shark Tank products I've bought over the years.
I was gonna bring that up.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed. I have the phone soap thing, which is the little UV light that cleans bacteria off of your cell phone. I wear like exclusively Bombas socks. The number of like Shark Tank items I have around my home is pretty shocking. I've ordered like cotton candy and like maple syrup at one point, and like, yeah, it's just been a lot. I've ordered a bunch of the things because I'm sitting there, and that's exactly obviously what they want to have happen. Everybody sells out of their stuff if the product looks good on the night that it airs. I'm the guy. Like, I'm why people want to be on the show, because I'm just the dumb consumer that's like, sure, I'll try it. Because normally I'll buy something that's like a lower threshold or lower hurdle purchase, but I seem to have bought a lot of that stuff over the years.
Yeah, I think I've bought 2 products from Shark Tank over my life.
That seems low, Dan. Those are rookie numbers. You got to pump those numbers up.
I know. I got to get back on it. Some of them have been repeat purchases.
There you go.
So on the deals, the other thing I like seeing, right, there are a couple different categories of business that show up. The ones that I tend to gravitate away from because they're less exciting to me are just product based. Like, we make this thing and this is what we're going to sell. And that's where I think Kevin O'Leary's deals make the most sense to me, because there's a difference between a product and a business. And I've been wrong before in this, but it's very hard to create a product that's going to persist over a long period of time, because eventually everyone's going to have their hands on it. And if you can't modify it or have it evolve, you've basically sold everything you can and are going to feel the slow burn out of business.
I mean, yeah, are you an inventor? And because some of the people that are inventors are so bad at running businesses because all they want to do is come up with new stuff. And then you've got these execution people, and this is not a Shark Tank product, but I think of the Instant Pot. So the company that makes the Instant Pot, I believe, is in bankruptcy right now because they basically made a thing so good that nobody ever needs to replace it. In the DJ world, that basically happened to Techniques with turntables. Like, they were so solid, and you can still, to this day, find nightclubs with Techniques Mark II, which came out in like 1987, sitting in them. And they've upgraded it over time, but the features have largely remained the same. And so, like, people just didn't need to buy them again. And so they eventually stopped making them because they were like, well, I guess we can't sell any more of these if we've made it too robust, which is an uncomfortable lesson in capitalism, right? Like, it's like you want to make a good product, but if you actually want to have a business, you can't make it that good. You need people to want to replace it after they love it.
For sure.
So here's where I get frustrated with the show. And there's two things that have always bugged me. The first of which is when they talk about taking a flyer. And I'm going to use Mark Cuban for this example because I think the math is really important here to reference what a flyer means for Mark Cuban. Okay. And when they say they're going to take a flyer, normally it's like hey, I don't know if this is going to work. Maybe this is a crazy idea. It's just silly enough that people might want to buy it. And I wanted to take a look at Mark Cuban's actual investing track record and think about how he views a flyer. So I have not verified this, but I'm on sharkalytics.com.
Sounds legit.
It sounds super legit, but it does look like it's fairly decently sourced data. And they suggest that over the life of the show, he's done 85 deals, 85 different companies he's invested in, fairly diversified portfolio. He's invested $19.85 million on the air, right? So $20 million. And you think 20 million, that's quite a bit of money. And then you realize that Mark Cuban's net worth is $6.2 billion. To put this in perspective, if you had a $500,000 portfolio, the amount of Mark Cuban's net worth that he has invested into Shark Tank deals relative to $500,000 is $1,600. $1,600. That is the relative amount of his net worth that he has thrown down in the tank, even on what have been at the highest $2 million deals, all of them in aggregate over many seasons. $1,600 relative to somebody that's got $500,000.
Yeah, it's like a short trip to the beach for a family of 2.
They're all flyers for him. Like, it is completely immaterial to his wealth whether they quintuple or go to zero. Like, it doesn't move the needle at all on those investment sizes. Now, when he drops $2 million, maybe you could argue that only on his biggest deals that could become material. I mean, $1 million probably still feels like a lot of money, even if you've got $1 billion, right? But They're all flyers. When you think about his portfolio from a position sizing standpoint, they could all just be complete nonsense. It simply doesn't matter.
That's true. 85 deals, right? If one of them fails, it's a who cares. But
so why does he do it, Dan? Why do you think a guy like that does Shark Tank if it basically doesn't matter for his wealth?
I think what you said earlier is material that for them, it's also brand building. So I think he likes getting his messaging out there. He likes being a personality. He is very visible at Mavs games. Like, he is not an owner that's hidden in the box. He is seen seated at the games because he likes to be out there and he likes to be heard. That's all part of his brand. I mean, it's also not inconceivable that one small deal could blow up really big. I don't know offhand what the biggest deal on Shark Tank was, but I know there have been products that have made a lot of money. So
there have been. Yeah, I think several of them are in the hundreds of millions in sales. Like Scrub Daddy has done really well. And there's been a few of those, which, by the way, I own those too.
All right. I could add one more to my list of purchases because those are actually pretty great.
You've got the Scrub Daddy?
I've got the Scrub Daddy. Also, by the way, a product which I would not have invested in because I'm not super excited about sponges necessarily. Everyone needs them, and they don't last forever. You've got to replace them. So I guess
do not. It's a consumable. That's kind of what makes it a little bit of a better business is people do have to replace them over time. A dry sponge is a happy sponge, friends.
Now, does it change your thinking when you factor in that Mark Cuban's net worth is largely in big illiquid assets? Like the Mavs are, half or more of his net worth, which is not diversified, is not investable at any given time. So is he building his portfolio and diversifying in the ways that he can?
Possibly, but he seems to take deals. He's almost the opposite of Kevin O'Leary, right? Like he takes a lot of deals to me where it looks like I may never get my money back unless there's a sale, which sometimes there have been. But he almost specifically seems to invest in the idea and the concept and wants to be, whether he's portraying this or not, I don't know how he invests elsewhere. I think he wants to portray himself as kind of a big thinker of like what could be coming. And here's why I'm so fascinated by Cuban, by the way. We talk about Charlie Munger. We talk about Warren Buffett and how incredibly disciplined and buy and hold they are, right? Like their wealth, it was tremendous because of how disciplined their approach was in holding something forever. Mark Cuban is the opposite. When Mark Cuban sold his company to Yahoo and became a billionaire, if he had not done that, we would not know his name because that company would have basically gone to zero. He sold Yahoo a sinking ship, which is amazing, right? And then Yahoo has gone through its own trials and tribulations and has gone from being a preeminent, prominent internet brand to, I bet Yahoo is still making good money. It's obviously still out there. I think finance and I use Yahoo for like fantasy football and stuff, but he's almost the complete opposite. Like he timed the market. He absolutely nailed it in terms of getting out and had this monster exit. And had he not done that, it would have probably gone to zero. I don't know. He's an interesting investor to me because he's so antithetical to how I think about the rest of what I want to be as an investor. Is this guy that was like, holy cow, look at this craziness. I got to get out of here in the .com era, and took cash, not stock, basically. I think he might have taken stock and then immediately blew out of it is what he did.
Yeah, I feel like I remember stories of him like watching the ticker symbol move until he became a billionaire.
Yeah.
But I love that it can work both ways, right? It takes the right person to implement whatever their philosophy is effectively. Just like in financial planning, I always say there's no one right answer. There are a lot of ways to get to a good outcome. And it's just finding the right match for the person who's executing the strategy. And Mark Cuban will not be Warren Buffett and vice versa. Like they probably each would have failed in the other person's world.
So with that lens in mind, knowing that he's selling 75% of the Mavericks for, I think, $3.5 billion, is he timing that market? Or do you think he just like is it what you said that he doesn't have liquidity and maybe just wants the cash and wants to be diversified away from that single entity? But how amazing would it be if like the NBA just like goes away in the next decade? I don't think it's going to. That's not my like thesis here. But like, would he become known as like the greatest market timer of all if he ends up getting out of the NBA at the perfect time after having gotten out of the tech bubble?
I mean, you could certainly make that case. We'd have to put Dan Snyder into that category too. I wonder if, right, ownership and teams don't change hands often. Like that's a very scarce commodity. I wonder if the sale of a team like the Commanders like set a price in the market as to how much other teams and franchises are worth. And maybe someone like Mark Cuban sees that and says, all right, we have a comp we can go off that's really high. It was like $6 billion for
I think, I mean, I think they were saying that the Mavericks were valued at 4, and he's selling
the Commanders.
Oh yeah. It was 6.025 or something.
There you go
for the Commanders. Yeah, it was $6 billion.
Yeah,
and that's a franchise that's going to need more money. By the way, they need a stadium. They need all sorts of stuff.
They need talent.
They need a new head coach. Sorry, Ron. That's So there's a lot going on there too.
Yeah. So I mean, he's also been at it for a while. The thing that shocked me the most when I heard it was my perception was that means he wouldn't be involved anymore, which that would have been surprising to me. But it looks like he worked the deal to make sure he gets to still be a part of the organization.
Yeah, he gets to keep his seats at least.
Yeah.
So here's the only other thing that really bugs me about Shark Tank. And I'm going to couch this view, but the way people celebrate getting a deal like it's the finish line.
Right.
Dan, you've got a business that took on investors. Was that the finish line?
No, it was like barely the starting line, right? Because you can't flip the on switch until you've got the capital to execute the vision. And that was just the beginning. When we had our investor money, we hadn't even had an approved bank loan for the rest of it. Like I had to negotiate with them to even let us get the rest of the funding we needed to hit the go button. And then, you can raise money as an existing business, like an existing operating business that's profitable. And presumably you're taking in money because you want to go to the next level. So there's a lot of work ahead of you and more responsibility because it's not just you and mom and dad or whoever it is.
That old fiduciary responsibility.
Totally. So now you are accountable to someone who, if they invested a couple $1 million, care a great deal about what happens to their money. And you better be organized and be able to show some results.
Now, they may just be celebrating because getting a deal, I believe, guarantees you're going to be on the air, right? So there's plenty of things that get pitched. So, yeah, like as much as that frustrates me to see people celebrating, like, yeah, we did it. Like, we knocked it out of the park. And like, yeah, knocking the pitch out of the park is a good thing. I think the celebration might just be that they're excited they're going to be on the air. They're going to get the powerful PR boost. They're going to get the giant surge in sales that comes from being a Shark Tank brand because dum-dums like me are going to go out and buy it. But yeah, that's just so far from the finish line. Like you are just getting started.
Here's the episode I want to see. I'm probably the only one in the world. There's a whole lot of due diligence that happens, presumably, after they say yes. I'm curious to see everyone go into the numbers, like look at the balance sheet, the profit and loss statement, then be like, you call this a financial statement? Like come back with a real one. I'm sure a lot of deals die in that second half of the transaction where they find out that, they've been either lied to or misled or misrepresented something or other.
Yeah, no, they absolutely do. A handshake on the show doesn't mean the deal closes. So there is a due diligence process. I mean, what's fascinating to me is what it seems like happens now because the show's been on for a while and the Sharks have gotten good at it, is I think they all have teams and I think they basically have like brand managers, right? Like we're going to plug you in. This is probably our web guy. This is our marketing person, our SEO person, our, all of the stuff. We're your procurement guy. We're going to help you get sourcing, right? I mean, that's kind of what it seems like happens is like they make their connections and it's like, oh yeah, you're paying too much for whatever your input material is. So we're going to help you squash costs because we already have all these relationships. It almost seems like the businesses should be investing into the Shark rather than the other way around, right? Like they're giving them money and then plugging them into what seems like an incredible team, which I think is really the value of getting a deal. Watching people squibble over like a few bucks for the equity always seems silly to me because I think the Sharks are probably giving away way more value than they're receiving up front.
I forgot about this, and I don't even know if we talked about it. But I think some of the Sharks do what you described because our team, Craftwork Capital, I'm in too many businesses.
Yeah, you've got
Crooked
too much
Crab,
going on.
early on, got a solicitation from the team of one of the early Sharks, and he basically put together a business that does what you described. It's like, listen, we're going to produce content for you. We're going to plug you into this system. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg to do it. And they are aggressive at marketing that. And I just remember we spoke with them because the way they approach you is very exciting. And we were very young in our business cycle and curious to learn more. So some Sharks are leveraging that to make money as well.
Sure. Yeah. Why wouldn't you? If I've got a turnkey thing where I can take any brand, plug it into my stuff and make it bigger, why wouldn't I do that? I mean, that seems like the better business, and then they get to even go further by creating that brand online and with the show to be that much more powerful. In any case, I know this is a lighthearted topic. It's a holiday week. I hope if you're listening to this that we have taken up some part of your drive to where you're going, or you're checking us out on YouTube. Who are your favorite Sharks? Is there a deal that you have loved watching it come together? Is there a product you have bought? Are you also a Bombas Sox fan like me? It's like literally all I own. I have so many of them. It's unbelievable. This is the season too. I tend to get them as a Christmas gift. So
it's a good Christmas gift.
Yeah, I'm deep into Bombas Sox.
Who is your favorite Shark? Do you have one?
Are we asking about who I would want to do a deal with or who I enjoy watching?
Ooh, those are good questions. Let's do both.
I think I would want to do a deal with Barbara Corcoran. I love Barbara. First of all, she like takes her entrepreneurs out to like Deer Valley and skis with them. So I'm like already very into that. I would love to be on Barbara's retreat and go hang out with the other entrepreneurs she takes out to Deer Valley. I don't know. She's told her story several times on the show. Barbara invests and lives her life with a bit of a chip on her shoulder that I really appreciate. And I think she's a hustler. I think she is just a really good business person. And she seems to really care about the folks she invests in on the show. So whether that's just good branding or if I'm actually a good judge of character there, that's who I think I would choose to do a deal with. But I love watching Cuban make deals. I love watching him get into it with people and argue with Kevin. And like, I mean, so yeah, I'm going to miss having Mark Cuban on the show because I think his entertainment factor is as big as anybody's because of kind of how he stirs the pot.
Yeah. I think as far as who I like watching, I love watching Kevin in particular when he's fighting with Mark, because I think that's great TV. I just like his snarkiness and his like smugness. Yeah.
When he takes shots at people, he's like, yeah, you've got a lot of advice for somebody not putting up any money. that's like my favorite. Like, oh yeah, you seem to be giving them a lot of words of encouragement and no money, so shut up about it.
Yeah, I love him. Barbara's great. I like Robert. I think if I were to do a deal with someone, for some reason he resonates with me a lot too, and he's, you know, he invests in people, which I love, and he just seems like someone who would be, you know, a strong partnership for the future. But Mark's entertaining too. I like his style.
Yeah.
I'm watching. I just finished watching Entourage. I forget if we talked about this, but he's also a character in a little arc of Entourage.
He
as
is
himself as an investor too.
As himself with a real tequila company that he was not actually invested in.
But was that a real tequila company?
Avion, yeah, it's on the shelf right now.
Oh,
and it's good tequila if you're a tequila
I'm showing
drinker.
My hand on what I drink or don't drink.
Yeah,
cool.
That's a real tequila company, but he was not really invested in it. Yeah, no, it was a very, very blurred line between like reality and fiction on that show for that.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, no, that's some of the coolest PR you could probably do back in that day.
No kidding.
Who was your favorite shark? Who would you want to do a deal with? We would love to hear from you. Our email address is checkyourbalances@outlook.com. Leave us a comment in the YouTube comment section. You can like, subscribe, all of that stuff. Share the show. Who knows? We hope you are having a wonderful holiday season. We appreciate you tuning in to hear us jabber about. And we'll catch you next week on another episode.